The USAID Education in Crisis and Conflict Network, in partnership with the International Network for Education in Emergencies, the Journal on Education in Emergencies, and New York University, are happy to present to you interviews with the authors.
Hello, and welcome to the Journal on Education in Emergencies video webcast series. I'm JEiE Lawman, the Managing Editor for the Journal on Education in Emergencies, or JEiE. We're thrilled to present interviews from academics and practitioners from around the world who contributed to JEiE's first publication. As you'll see on the slide on the left, we feature 3 research articles and 1 field note. Each of the video webcasts covers one of these articles and its key takeaways. Please also be sure to check out JEiE's second issue, available on the INEE website.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kylie Garner, and I am a technical editor on the Journal for Education in Emergencies. And I'm excited today to be interviewing Dr. Catalina Prante, one of the main researchers on a recent impact evaluation titled Improving the Quality of School Interactions and Student Well-Being, Impacts of 1 Year of a School-Based Program in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Hello, Catalina, and welcome.
Hi, Kylie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
I'm glad. All right, let's dive into this interview. My first question for you is, can you describe your background and how you came to be interested in social and emotional learning, and why do you believe this area is so important to study?
Yes, I'm a developmental psychologist. I got my PhD at New York University, where I think you are doing your master's right now.
I am.
Yes. Before my PhD, I double majored in psychology and anthropology at Los Andes University in Colombia. And my interest in social and emotional learning is rooted in my experiences growing up in Colombia. It has been found that children who grow up in contexts where violence is normative are likely to develop biases in how they process social information, and also a behavioral repertoire that is likely to lead to the reproduction of violence in their context. Social and emotional skills, on the other hand, and I'm talking about things like self-regulation, empathy, assertive conflict resolution strategies, those skills have been found to have the potential to disrupt the cycle of violence. So I became very interested in understanding how those skills develop and how we can intentionally teach these skills to children and nurture those skills so that we can contribute to the interruption of the cycle of violence in Colombia and also in other places.
Certainly a very important goal. Absolutely. All right, so your paper presents the results of an impact evaluation of a school-based program in the DRC called Learning to Read in Healing Classrooms. Please, can you tell us more about this program?
Yes, I think there are 2 major factors that shaped the program when it was being developed in 2010, and those are still true today. The first one is that we have seen unprecedented gains in access to primary education since the Millennium Development Goals and Education for All were established in the year 2000. But unfortunately, we also know that millions of children who are in school are failing to learn the basic academic and social and emotional skills that set the foundations for lifelong learning and success. So in addition to maintaining the gains in access to primary education, it became really clear that we needed to also shift our focus from access to quality of education. And that really takes me to the second point. I think there are many pieces that need to fit together in order for children to benefit from high-quality education. If we think about the school and classroom context, there are physical and material conditions, such as having a roof over our heads or having reading materials that are going to facilitate or hinder the learning process. But once those basic needs are met, it is really the quality of social and instructional interactions between the teachers and the students that is going to make the most difference. So drawing from many years of experience working in low-income countries affected by war, our colleagues at the International Rescue Committee, the IRC, designed an in-service teacher training program called Learning in Healing Classrooms. This program consists, in a nutshell, I mean, it is a very rich and complex program, but briefly, it consists of training and supporting teachers to use new math and reading curricula that integrate a series of techniques designed to transform the quality of social and instructional interactions in the classroom. And it is expected that with time, those changes in teachers' motivation, competence, and in the interactions that are happening in the classroom are going to drive changes in children's academic outcomes and psychosocial outcomes. And you have the outcomes that were the focus of our study in the right side of the slide. So one thing that I found really interesting and important about this program is that it echoes the principles of social and emotional learning approaches that are becoming increasingly popular in high-income countries. And the reason why I like this is because these programs seek to integrate practices that contribute to creating safer, more welcoming, and more emotionally supportive learning environments into core academic lessons. It is no longer seen as something separate from academic learning, but it is actually seen as an integral part of the learning process.
All right. Okay, so now to move on to the more technical aspects of the study, can you describe the research design that was used for the evaluation, and why did the evaluation team decide this particular design was the best way to go?
Okay, so we used a cluster randomized trial with a wait list control design. And that is a very long name for a design, so let's break it into two parts. The first part is the cluster randomized trial. And this decision was mostly driven by the service delivery model that was used by the program. So there were fewer trainers than schools or teachers that needed to be supported. So it was necessary for each trainer to support a group of schools. And this was easier to do if the schools that a given trainer was working with were close to each other. So basically, the evaluation design was adapted to match the realities in the field. So we have, as you can see in the diagram, we have students and teachers who are nested in schools, and schools that are grouped or nested in school clusters, or groups of 2 to 6 schools that were close to each other. And so basically what we did was randomize those school clusters to receiving different treatments. We allocated those clusters to different treatment conditions, basically. Okay. And so also this assignment happened through public lotteries, and that is why it is a cluster randomized trial. Okay, so now on to the second part, the wait list control design. So as the name suggests, we assigned the school clusters to receiving the program in 3 different years. So the groups that had to wait 1 or 2 years to start receiving the program could serve as comparison for the group that started in 2011. I think there is a great advantage to this design, which is that all participants eventually get to receive the program. And this addresses one of the key concerns, the key ethical concerns that people have when conducting a randomized trial, which is that some of the beneficiaries are denied the treatment. So with this design, we got the most rigorous possible design, but taking into consideration field realities and also ethical concerns.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Now, can you briefly describe the measures your evaluation team used for this study?
Yeah, I'll make my best to be brief. Let me start by saying that measurement was one of the key challenges that we faced. We prioritized using measures that had been previously used in low-income countries and in sub-Saharan African countries in particular. But for some of the outcomes of interest, measures that met these requirements were just not available. They didn't exist. So, for example, to measure supportive schools and teachers, the first construct in the table, we were very fortunate to use some questions from the Conditions for Learning survey. which is a measure developed by AIR that has been used extensively as part of the evaluation of child-friendly schools, a program developed by UNICEF. But for some of the other outcomes, we didn't have that luxury. So we went through a process of piloting the measures to improve the reliability and cultural validity, but it is certainly a limitation of our study and an area where I think the field as a whole can improve a lot. I think more measurement studies are needed, and more funding to do this kind of research is needed so that we can all have access to measures that are reliable, are internally coherent, and that have construct and cultural validity. I think there is definitely a scarcity of these kinds of measures to do research in these different parts of the world. And before we move on, I just wanted to also point out that if you think back to our theory of change, changes in teachers' competence and the practices in the classroom are at the center of this theory of change. However, unfortunately, we were unable to measure classroom practices directly. And I think that is a key limitation of the study. I think that any program evaluation where the theory of change has teachers at the center should really try to conduct direct classroom observations. And I just want to give some credit to my colleagues at Global Ties at NYU, and in particular Dr. Seidman's team. They have been developing a classroom observation measure to use in low-income countries. I think that's a good progress for the field.
Yeah, they're thankful for the shout-out.
I hope so.
All right. Our next question is, can you explain what the results of your study say about the impact the Learning to Read in a Healing Classroom program had on these chosen measures you just spoke of?
Sure. I think that we found promising but mixed results. So I think that's the main takeaway. I would put emphasis on promising. So the first finding was aligned with the theory of change, and we found, as expected, that students in the program schools felt more welcome, more respected, more safe, more emotionally supported by their teachers, and they also felt that the classroom became or was more engaging and more intellectually stimulating compared to students who were in the comparison schools. And I think this is very promising, and it speaks to the potential of programs like Learning in Healing Classrooms to improve the daily experiences of children who are growing up and developing in low-income countries affected by war. However, contrary to what we expected, children in the schools that were implementing the program reported knowing less about their school activities and routines and feeling less encouraged by their teachers to cooperate and share with their peers. I think there may be different reasons why this was the case. I think the reason that resonates with me the most is that this was the first year of a whole school program aimed at fundamentally transforming how the school was run. So students may have felt disoriented from all these changes that were brought about by the program. We find some partial support for this hypothesis in the fact that we didn't find this negative effect for the younger students in our sample. So those were second graders. But we found this negative effect in the older students who presumably have spent more time in school and are more accustomed to business as usual. So they would be more surprised by the changes introduced by the program. But in any case, I think what is most important is that program developers take this into consideration and maybe include safeguards in the program to prevent children from feeling disoriented and to ensure that children know what to expect when a new program that aims to change the way the school works is being introduced. There is the second part of this finding, which is that students were feeling less encouraged to cooperate and share with their peers. I think that's more surprising and harder to explain, but our hypothesis is that the program equipped teachers with both whole classroom activities as well as the small group activities that aim to improve cooperation. But in many classrooms in the DRC, teachers have over 50 students, and it may be really hard to manage small group activities when you have so many students. In fact, our colleague Paul Frisoli conducted a qualitative study in some of the same schools that were part of this evaluation, and he found that teachers reported having difficulty with the small group activities because they thought that the classroom became chaotic and loud. So I think there are different potential things to do here. One is maybe support teachers to become more comfortable using these techniques and support them in how to manage these techniques in classrooms with many, many children. Another one is that the program may have to fine-tune their methods to this kind of context, and it is possible that something different is needed when you have all these children. But this is an area that definitely requires more research. And I guess that takes me to the last point, which is that we found no main effects on the students' subjective well-being. This was not entirely unexpected, given that the theory of change hypothesizes that changes in the students' psychosocial outcomes are going to take longer to materialize than changes in the perception of the classroom and school environment. However, we also have to consider the possibility that universal school program is not necessarily the right approach to affect changes in these outcomes. It may be that it isn't enough. I am definitely an advocate for teaching children specific social and emotional skills, and in this case in particular, we could think of things like coping skills to deal with the stress, or conflict resolution skills to minimize fear victimization in the school.
Right. I too am an advocate of that, absolutely.
Yes.
All right, and forgive me for jumping the gun on the last question, but we're here now. Can you describe for us the limitations of this study? You have mentioned it in previous questions, but perhaps you'd like to provide a more comprehensive answer, and any specific challenges you faced.
Yes, our team faced a diversity of challenges. There are challenges that we, I think, can do little about, such as violence outbreaks. Mm-hmm. There are other challenges that are relatively easy to tackle and that people are already working to solve, such as, for example, lack of electricity in certain areas. But there are other challenges that need more fundamental changes in how research is done and funded. I would like to highlight two for the sake of brevity. I think the first one has to do with the timeline that we were working with. I think the project was set out to achieve more than it is reasonable to achieve with the time and resources that we had. So the first year of implementation was also the time to adapt and refine the intervention to the Congolese context. And in spite of all the efforts of our wonderful colleagues at the International Rescue Committee, this led to deviations from the original implementation plan. For example, part of the curricular materials were not ready and could not be delivered during the first year. And this means that we were only able to examine impacts of a partial or incomplete version of the program instead of the full program. And these may be, in fact, responsible for some of the unexpected findings that we observed. I think that for us, the takeaway is that whenever a program is going to be implemented in a new context, which can be a new country like the Congo, like the DR Congo, or it may be a different state in the same country where you may be serving a different population or living with different regulations, I think enough time should be given to piloting the program at a small scale and without pressure of having an impact evaluation. Because we need to test that our assumptions are still relevant and that the way in which we see the program working is going to be feasible in this new context. The second challenge that I would like to highlight is that we weren't able to collect high-quality implementation or monitoring data. I think that collecting systematic and detailed implementation data is something that I cannot emphasize more. I think it should be a priority for all impact studies. Knowing if the program was implemented as planned or how actual implementation differs from the regional plan is critical to making sense of evaluation findings. Otherwise, I think we're left in the dark, wondering if the findings are due to implementation failures or to problems with the theory of change. And those two are very different kinds of problems. I would like to end on a positive note because I think that in spite of all these limitations, the study extends our knowledge about what may work to improve quality education in low-income countries affected by wars, such as the DR Congo. And it also suggests, and I hope it shows people, that it is possible to do both rigorous research and this kind of very innovative and promising program in a context like the DRC.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that wraps it up, Catalina. Thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed by me and for sharing your knowledge and expertise in this vital area. The work you do impacts children all over the world, so we are thankful to you for that.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you, Kylie. Thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah, have a great day.